Welcome my dear learners. Today I, Professor Rasmeet Kaur Malhi from the Department of Management of Bhopal School of Social Sciences, and today we are going to talk about what are the methods of data collection, which is from the subject Basics of Research. So let's quickly start with what is the meaning of data collection. Data collection is systematically gathering the information on research, decision making and analysis. Today we are going to discuss about what are the methods of data collection. So let's have a very quick overview about what do we mean by data. In today's field, whether it is business, economics, healthcare or technology, data plays a very important role. Data collection is the foundation of research and decision making. Choosing the right method of data collection helps us to get the data which is reliable, more accurate and gives us a useful insight. A combination of primary and secondary data helps us in the comprehensive analysis. So let us understand what are the methods of data collection. Broadly, when we classify these methods of data collection, it is primary and secondary data. Primary data is said to be the first-hand data, whereas the secondary data is usually the pre-existing data. Let us understand what are the various types of primary data. Under primary data, we have survey and questionnaires, interviews, focus groups, observations and experiments. Whereas when we talk about the secondary data, we have books and research papers, government reports and publications, company reports and financial statements, the online databases and websites, and also the news articles and the business magazines. Let us understand what are the different sources of primary data one by one. Talking about the first one, that is survey and questionnaire. These surveys and questionnaires are basically used to collect the first-hand data from the respondent, and it involves structured questions which are given to the respondents. Structured meaning planned questions by the researcher. It is used basically to collect opinions, preferences and feedbacks. These kinds of surveys and questionnaires have open-ended and close-ended questions which helps the researcher in data analysis. Talking about the second one, that is interview. Interviews are basically the direct interaction with the respondents, and it is done either in the form of structured interview, semi-structured or maybe an unstructured interview with certain unstructured questions. Here structure meaning planned, that is planned interview, a semi-planned interview and an unplanned interview. It helps us to get more detailed insights as compared to the first one, that is in the form of surveys and questionnaires. Now taking an example of interviews, it can be like interviewing business leaders with market trends or about the market trends gives us an insights about what are the changes which are happening in the market. Talking about the third one, that is focus groups. Focus groups means a discussion with a small group of people on a specific topic. This is basically used to understand the perceptions and opinions of these people. It is more close in a small group and it helps us to get more accurate data. A focus group can also be like when you are pre-launching any product. So we go for a focus group discussion to know about the insights from the people. The next primary data source can be in the form of observations. Observations is basically where a researcher observes what is people behavior without the interaction. It is only his or her skill, that is of the observer, where he tries to collect the data. It can be participant involved or at times it is only non-participant involving, which is also known as just observing the respondents. For example, if I say observing customer behavior in a store is one of the sources of collecting primary data. Now let me talk about what are the advantages of primary data, and then later we will be discussing the advantages and limitations of the secondary data as well. Talking about the advantages of primary data, it helps us to give the data which is more relevant and it is more specific. So you can directly address the research questions. Primary data also provides accuracy and reliability. So the data is usually more accurate and reliable when it is first-hand collected data. Primary data is also up to date because it is the most current information which is collected in the real time or during the study period. The fourth advantage of primary data could be that it has a greater control. By using certain tools, sampling methods and data collection techniques, it helps us in getting more consistent and quality data. Now let us talk about what are the limitations of primary data. First and the foremost limitation of primary data is that it is very time consuming. Collecting data which is also called as the first hand data requires a significant time, especially when you are doing a large scale or a field based study. The second limitation of primary data source is that it is very costly. When you design tools, you conduct surveys, you have to travel, you are hiring enumerators, that also leads to very high expenses. Third limitation of primary data is that it is resource intensive. It demands substantial human and logical resources to manage the entire process very efficiently. Fourth limitation of primary data is that there are chances of possibility of biasness. Now that biasness can be from the researcher's point of view or also from the respondent's personal bias, which can affect the quality and the objectivity of the study. And the last limitation I would say is that primary data has its own limited scope. Due to time and budget constraints, researchers may not be able to reach large or more diverse population. Now let's talk about what are the advantages of secondary data. Secondary data is comparatively very cost effective. Why? Because the data is already available, so it is less expensive and it does not require the researcher to conduct any field work. Talking about the second advantage of secondary data is that it is very much time saving. It saves you significant time in the entire research process because of the already existing data. The third advantage of secondary data is the accessibility. Data is available through journals, government reports, institutional database and online repositories, which helps you to fetch the data very fast. This data is also useful for any kind of historical and longitudinal analysis. So if you are doing a research where you are studying the trend over time or comparing the data which is across different period or location, secondary data is very, very helpful. Now let me just quickly brief about what are the limitations of the secondary data source. As I have just discussed about the advantages, there are certain limitations as well. One of them is lack of relevance. The data, when you have already collected and you are using it for your study, it might not exactly match with the research questions or objectives of your study. That is one of the limitation. Second one is it can also be giving you outdated information. When it is already, as I said, it is collected data. So it is in the past, it may not be that regular or may not reflect that information which is the current trend or the current reality is going on. So that becomes another limitation of the secondary data. Talking about the third one as a limitation of secondary data is regarding its questionable accuracy and creditability. The researcher has no control over how the data was originally collected. So there are certain concerns which raise regarding the reliability and validity of the data. The secondary data also lacks with one of the very important component which talks about inconsistent data. Sometimes data sets may be missing very important informations or variables which you require for your research study. And the last limitation can be access restrictions. Many times secondary data sources may be behind your paywalls, and because of that limitation you require certain permissions from academic or commercial authorities where you are not able to access to that data. So that becomes another limitation of secondary data. So with this, as we wrap up, just remember that effective data collection is the backbone of meaningful insights and informed decision. Choosing the right method ensures research and analysis keeping its accuracy, reliability and ethical integrity. So keep exploring, keep questioning and let data guide you towards discovery. Thank you for watching this video.